humblemud.
Recently, I covered 12 ZX Spectrum Homebrew games that absolutely blew me away, and in today's video I'm going to talk about 12 more for my total package of 24 amazing Homebrew ZX Spectrum games. Now, for the sake of those who have already watched part 1, I'm not going to go over the history of the console like I did in part 1, and I'm going to get straight to the games so you can see how amazing these are. However, I'm going to link part 1 down below, so if you missed the first part, definitely make sure you go back to that one. Some of my favorites are in that video as well. You don't want to miss either of these. But let's get to the games, and I'm going to start with one of the most impressive titles I've honestly seen all year. Castlevania Spectral Interlude might as well be a mainline classicvania Castlevania game. It initially started out as a remake of Simon's Quest, I believe, but as the developer started working on it more, it kind of grew into its own thing with its own storyline, gameplay mechanics, and so on. Now, I haven't played Simon's Quest myself, but one thing I do know that Simon's Quest does is it offers a lot of RPG elements. There are shopkeepers you can meet to get upgrades, I'm assuming, and things like that, and the similarities are definitely there in this one as well. So what you end up having with Spectral Interlude is this game where it feels like a nice blend between the Metroidvania Castlevanias like Symphony of the Night and the classic style games like the original Castlevania or Super Castlevania 4. Unlike the NES Castlevanias though, you can actually control your movement, which is really nice. And again, as I said, there is an entirely new storyline. In this story, you come across this necromancer, and when you defeat him, he turns into this magical device that his soul is trapped in. He encourages you to keep him with you because he'll be able to lead you to all of the pillars around the world of Castlevania, and these pillars act as sort of like signposts where the things that separate our dimension from the demonic dimensions are thin. And so Simon can use these signposts to his advantage in order to take down the evil once and for all, including Dracula himself, right? And while the dialogue is quite sarcastic in this game and feels different from Castlevania in that sense, the gameplay is where it really matters, and this game has it in spades. You'll be doing lots of exploration, lots of backtracking. You can find health upgrades that permanently increase your health. You can find metal and then take it to the blacksmith in the main town to equip to your whip to make it stronger. The NPCs are actually helpful and will sell you things like maps that of course will help you in your adventure. The boss fights are really cool. I had a blast doing this one, and the storyline, despite the sarcastic dialogue here and there, is really engaging. Do not sleep on this one, especially if you like the classic Castlevania games. This one is honestly one of the best that I've ever played, and I've played a lot of them. Angels. So Angels is another game made by Zacia Entertainment. In my last episode, I covered 2 games from them and kind of introduced them as this really talented indie dev studio that's making these wild ZX Spectrum games that make great use of the hardware and often feature really mystical hot girls that kick ass, basically. And this one is no exception. However, instead of the run and gun style Zacia games that I showed in last week's episode, this is a pure beat 'em up. The fun thing about this game that separates it from many other beat 'em ups though is that you're playing as these 2 angels. They are literal angels, even though they look like they could be Charlie's Angels. Anyway, they have the ability to tag in and out at any given time. With just the press of a button, you can swap between the 2 different girls, and they have 2 different movesets and 2 different health pools. The blonde girl is able to do these back handsprings and quickly get herself out of harm's way, while the redhead is able to actually jump and do this flying kick at her enemies, so she has a better approach game. So between the 2 of them, you have this sort of yin and yang where one is a little more offensive and one is a little more defensive. You have a slew of different fighting attacks you can do. When your power meter charges up enough, you can shoot fireballs, and you can swap between them on the fly. So as you can guess, you're going to swap between offensive and defensive style of play constantly. And then to make the game even more interesting, when they leave the level to go to the next area where they go to kick some more ass, they get into their angel alien ships, and then you're playing a shoot 'em up all of a sudden. Really cool, really unexpected, and that serves as kind of like level 2, and then you go to another beat 'em up game. The variety here is so awesome. The graphics are phenomenal, which is typical of the studio's work, and once I understood how to play this game, especially the swap mechanics and the different attacks that they can do, it clicked, and this game went from being, oh, it's kind of okay, to, wow, this is seriously impressive. Now, I've played just about every retro Batman game that exists across a variety of consoles, from the TurboGrafx 16 to the Super Nintendo to the NES, all over. But honestly guys, this fan-made game, The Dark Knight Shadows of Madness, on the ZX Spectrum is among the best. It is hard as nails in some places, so I'll go ahead and tell you maybe use save states, but that doesn't take away from the fun of playing a retro game in modern times. I mean, that's why we have save states, right? The thing I like about this game is even though you're playing as this little chibi Batman who's super cute, and I believe he's like playing with a yo-yo when you let him stand idle too long, super cute. Even though the aesthetic is like this actually feels a lot like a Batman game in a way that a lot of retro Batman games weren't really able to capture. And what I mean by this is it's a little more slow and methodical. You kind of approach every single screen in the way that you do almost like the Arkham games, where you kind of hide in the shadows and pounce on them when the time is right and then get yourself out of harm's way. Yes, Batman can fight, but his style isn't always to brute force combat encounters, no matter how much Zack Snyder would like to convince you that that's how he does things. There are lots of obstacles and things to look out for, so you'll kind of slowly approach each little screen like a puzzle, and then use his batarangs to take out various enemies, to activate switches, and do all kinds of other things. Essentially, you're trying to apprehend this terrorist group who is trying to unleash this virus across the city of Gotham, and so you'll see yourself doing this adventuring that I've been showing you, and when you make it to the next level, you'll be driving the Batmobile and collecting the bombs that they've laid along a bridge. You'll then try to find the antidote in level 3, and then you'll finally take down the crime lord himself at the end of the game, which I'm not going to show for spoiler reasons. While this game only has 4 levels, like I said, the difficulty is definitely there, and apparently there's even a version where you can play as Robin that's even harder. I can't even imagine. Again, with only 4 levels, you can still get a lot of mileage out of this. I really enjoyed this game, perhaps more than I think I should have, but I'm a sucker for retro Batman games, and again, as I said earlier, this is among the best. Cubix. Now, I'll go ahead and say right off the bat, this game is heavily inspired by Fez. They even say that at the beginning of the game, and so if this is just like Fez, I've never played that one, forgive me. However, if it is just like Fez, well, this is a cool way to experience some similar gameplay. Essentially, you play as this little cube guy who's trying to save the world, and I've pretty much already forgotten the plot, but the puzzle platforming gameplay is where it's at, and that's what you're here for, right? So essentially, you're playing as this little square guy who's trying to climb up this tower, and you start learning pretty quickly that he can use his little tiny arms to plant other squares to build platforms for himself and go even higher up this tower. However, eventually you'll find this 3D power-up. And when you get that, the game opens up into what it really is, which is a 3D exploration puzzle platformer. And let me just say, of course, considering this 1982 8-bit hardware, Cubix is insanely impressive to look at. It has a modern indie feeling. I mean, it is a modern indie game, essentially. And the puzzle platforming is really fun and addictive. The 3D effects here are phenomenal. This is one of those games that has won a lot of awards in the homebrew scene, and it most certainly deserves it. If you like this kind of stuff, you have to play this game. It's so fun. Next, we've got Vradark Sphere. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but this game is essentially like Crypt of the Necrodancer. You know how in that game you would kind of move to the beat of the music, and when you took a step, your enemies took a step, and so you kind of have to creatively figure out your way to traverse through each of these maps? Well, this game is a lot like that, except you don't actually have to move to the beat of the music, which to me is a little more freeing, even though maybe it's not quite as immediately fun. You're playing as this wizard, and you're trying to make it through each level and complete this grand quest, but there are monsters everywhere, and they're very good and very efficient at killing you. You have a limited amount of health, but when you take a step, the enemies take a step, so you can figure out how to approach them the best way, like to ensure that you hit them before they hit you. You have your normal face-to-face attack, physical attacks, and then you also have a magic blast that you can unleash if you hold down the attack button. However, of course, your mana pools are limited, so again, you've got to be really strategic. And another thing I have to mention about Vradark Sphere is while it is easy to die in this game, if you manage to collect 10 coins and you do get killed, you can make a deal with the Grim Reaper and he'll bring you back to life. So then you can start that level over again with max health. Honestly, pretty good deal for 10 coins. There is not a lot of animation in this game, admittedly, but I still find it really fun, and this is one that I keep coming back to. This one is another one with a name I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce, Hafoc Tor. This is actually a sequel to another game called Winchwield, which is also hard to pronounce. If you're like me, when you're looking for hidden gems on a console, something you want to have is an RPG. Well, this is a first-person dungeon crawling RPG, turn-based combat, the works. It's worth playing just to see it running on hardware as old as this. It has a day and night cycle, it has armor you can equip, multiple party members, and the reason I chose this one over its sequel is I don't think you necessarily have to know everything that's going on to play this one. I found it a little more enjoyable. The engine that it uses runs everything a lot better, and it's just more of an enjoyable experience. Of course, compared to a lot of modern RPGs today, this thing is going to feel very archaic. Even for me, it was like a little too slow in a lot of places. But if you're like an old school RPG fan who grew up with stuff like Wizardry and you really enjoy first-person dungeon crawlers, this is a really quality game. I mean, this thing has side quests, it has a huge map that you can explore, there's so much to do. And while I've not admittedly made a ton of progress, I had to have this one on here because look at this. I mean, who does a freaking day and night cycle on an 8-bit console from 1982 that's a first-person dungeon crawler? Like, what are we doing? It's amazing to see, right? Ooze the Escape. Now, when I was kind of going through my gaming renaissance that I talked about in some of my earlier videos, one of the games that I really fell in love with was Carry On, and while I didn't talk about that game a lot, I really loved the concept of that game. You're essentially this alien abomination of a creature that's trying to escape from this facility, and it's really fun to actually be able to play as the monster. Well, in Ooze the Escape, you're doing something similar. You're just with a cuter protagonist, admittedly. But what's fun about this one is it has that sort of Mario Galaxy gravity type effect where you can, with the press of a button, switch between different states of gravity and attach yourself to the ceiling or the floor depending on where you are, and you're trying to navigate through these tight corridors, electrical fences, and all these sorts of things. And it has a sort of Metroidvania aspect where you're trying to collect these different colored chips so that you can unlock different colored doors and eventually, I'm assuming, make your escape. This is another one where I've not made it super far, but I have played it a lot and I tried to make it far, and I feel like for a certain type of person this is going to be an awesome game, so I had to include it. The music in this one is super fun. I think everything about it is very readable, which I really appreciate, and yeah, it had to be on here. Next, we've got the oldest homebrew game on here, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Invasion of the Zombie Monsters. This is a fun little Halloween shoot 'em up, and yeah, I'll go ahead and say it, the scrolling in this game is not the best, but again, this is one of those earlier homebrew games for the console, and honestly, it's one of those things where when you're looking back at footage, the game seems really choppy and you're like, how could I play this? But when you're actually in the middle of the gameplay, it's not something that you notice. I actually think it controls really well, and it feels like a blend of, you know, like the classic run and gun side-scrolling games, obviously, but also with something like Mario. There are coins to collect everywhere, and there's a lot of platforming to do, and the boss fights are really fun. I liked this dude that like summons other evil creatures at you, then he tries to grab you, so you have to hide in the corner and then shoot him down. This game is super fun, and it was one of the early like hits in the ZX Spectrum homebrew scene from what I understand, and I think it still holds up. Super fun. It kind of gives me like Zombies Ate My Neighbors meets Ghost and Goblins kind of vibes. It even has a map sort of like Ghost and Goblins before you go into the next level. This is a really good game. Again, it's one of those that I think if it had been on the NES back in the day, it would have been considered a classic. Now, if you like the look of that kind of avoid 'em up style play that I talked about with Ooze the Escape and Impulsimal from my last video, you're probably going to like this one as well. But let me warn you, this one is weird. Harry the Fly is like this weird like 8-bit take on like a Dreamcast game. Like I feel like this is a really weird Sega game in the vein of like Toe Jam and Earl or that fish with the human face that they were trying to do in the Dreamcast era. This game is so weird. It's very like Sega coded in that sort of style of Sega, if you know what I mean. You essentially play as this little hair guy or like a worm or whatever, and then you go into this transmutation type of device and turn into a fly, and you go through this crazy, hypnotic, psychedelic, techno-infused environment with all these lights. It's freaking crazy. The presentation on this thing is like off the charts. There's really nothing else like this on the ZX Spectrum, and you're collecting all these goodies to get to an exit, I'm assuming, eventually on the other side. Again, this is another one where I don't make it very far, but it's so weird and so fun to try to make it far. And again, is another one I had to include just because this one will stick in your memory, and even if you're not even sure if you like it, it's one that you'll come back to time and time again because it's just too weird to ignore, and eventually you'll find that you do like it. What a strange game though. This next one is the Dark Redux. This is a first-person shooter Doom clone, essentially, on the ZX Spectrum. Now, as far as I'm aware, this was actually a game that was released in 1997. I think it was like a game that never got quite finished and then was like quietly released on the internet later. And then Zasya Entertainment, who makes those hot girl games that I've been ranting and raving about, remastered this game in 2021 and brought a lot of quality of life features to the game. And that's the version that I'm showing today. Like I said, this is a first-person shooter. It is like nightmare feel. The enemies are really scary. There's no music, there's only sound effects, so it's very eerie, and I think it's really well done. I think it's amazing how readable this game is. Like, I was playing this, and this is one of the later additions to the 24 games that I've got across these two videos, and I realized, like, I just stopped for a second and I realized, like, it's kind of crazy that I get a sense of depth and place in this game when it is so 2D in nature. Like, yeah, Doom is a 2D pixel-based game as well, but obviously there's a lot more detail in that game. This game is essentially sprites that have some sort of scaling technique applied to them against like a black background, and yet I'm able to recognize, even amongst these monocolored environments, where I'm at and what I'm doing, and collecting coins and killing demons and stuff just like it's Doom. It's a really fun title. Everyone loves a good boomer shooter, and it's amazing that it's running on hardware like this. Now, these last two games are probably my top two favorites across all 24 of these, along with Castlevania Spectral Interlude from the beginning of this video and Aliens and Valley of Rains from the last video. Sword of Ianna has easily the most impressive animations I've seen in a ZX Spectrum game thus far. It has that sort of like classic Prince of Persia style platforming and look to it, though it controls a lot better than those games, thankfully, in my opinion. And all of that is well and good. If that's what this whole game was, that would be fine. But then on top of that, you have like borderline Souls-like combat, which is insane for a game like this. When you pull out your sword, you go into like a combat mode and your character slowly inches forward towards his opponent. They do the same thing, and it makes the whole thing feel very cautious and intense in a way that it wouldn't feel if the combat was just really arcadey and action oriented. And depending on the directional inputs that you include with the button presses, you actually do different types of swings. Additionally, if you press up at just the right time, your character will put his sword in front of him, and you can parry enemy attacks, leaving them stunned so that you can then lay the hurt on them. This game is so ambitious. The graphics are gorgeous. There's actually an upgraded version of this game for like the Amiga, I think, or PC or something, but I would much rather play this one. I love the way it looks, and I just can't say enough about it. The exploration is really fun. The combat is really fun. It's one that I keep coming back to. And again, I've been saying something to this effect a lot, but if there was something like this that existed back then, I think this game would have been a classic. It would have probably inspired the whole Dark Souls-like gameplay years sooner. It's just a wonder to see this, that it even exists. I'm amazed by it. And the last game on this list, it's the first one that I fell in love with. It's the first one that I tried, so I do have a lot of nostalgia for it already, but I have to give the #1 spot to Seraphima. This is an original game made by Zasya Entertainment, again featuring an angelic, super hot woman that is equipped with these giant guns, and she is on a quest to save the Earth from reaching a devastating timeline where humanity is wiped from existence. You'll see yourself fighting cultists and machines and all kinds of other enemies like a Medusa, and this is a full-on Metroidvania experience. You'll collect various items, health upgrades, new weapons, and you explore this big open map that's closed off with different gates, so you've got to backtrack and then find other areas. The colors in this thing are gorgeous. If you die, you land in this sort of like heavenly sort of area. The graphics are so cool. Look at the reflections there. Look at the backgrounds. I love the details from the trees to the cars, all of the different scenarios you're going to find yourself in. The caverns down here look really scary and ominous. The music in this thing is awesome. It encapsulates what I love about the ZX Spectrum homebrew scene from the moment I stumbled upon it. And as I mentioned, this game has lots of little details. I love that when you shoot enemies and really lay the business and pump some lead into them, once you stop shooting and her guns go back up. You can see a little smoke trail come out of them. They didn't have to add that, but they did, and it's so cool. Seraphima is a blast, and if there was one game that I had to say you've got to try, it would probably be this one, or if you want to have a good game to compare to games on other platforms, I would say Castlevania Spectral Interlude or like Aliens Neoplasma. There are some serious gems here across all 24 of these, and I'm certain that there's at least one game that all of you are going to love. So if you're interested in these and want to see what else I found, definitely check out video 1. And also, I just want to say that if you find yourself really enjoying these games, a lot of these are pay what you want type games that you can get on itch.io, so you can obtain them for free, but I would highly encourage you to throw some dollars to the creators who made these games if you find yourself really enjoying them. The work that they did here clearly is immense. It's amazing what they're able to do on old hardware, and this homebrew scene is truly inspiring because when you actually look into the details of who made these types of games, you'll see people from all around the world. Like maybe there was a guy in Russia who did the artwork, and then another guy in Spain who did the gameplay. You'll see stuff like that all the time, and it's just so inspiring. We live in such a Americanized, American-focused internet where magazine publications, Wikipedia, all of those things are so focused on the American experience of what video games are. And so, you know, to us, like the video game crash of 1983 was such a big deal, but like in Europe, that wasn't even a thing. And that's just like one example. But when you start opening your mind to like all of the games and all of the different things that are going around the world and have gone around the world, you'll stumble upon some really cool stuff. I swear to you guys, I only checked out the ZX Spectrum because I saw some artists that do really cool artwork using the ZX Spectrum palette. That was really all of my exposure to it. I stumbled upon the game Night Lore that I thought looked really cool, and I found some other classic games that I've been showing here that are really fun and hold up, but I didn't know about this homebrew scene until like a month ago, and it's been so hard to not talk about it because it's inspiring, it's interesting, and a lot of these games are genuinely fantastic experiences. By far, the coolest, deepest, wildest rabbit hole that I've fallen down all year, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. Now, as I explained in my last video, I've been playing a lot of these on my Nintendo DS, 3DS, 2DS. Definitely recommend ZXDS if you want to get into this thing. There's some more details about that in part 1. Again, please check out part 1 if you haven't seen it. Great games there too. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay humble.